Hi everyone, this is Kenny, and today I'll be talking about standards. This is for the Teach Now program, Module 6, Week 1, Activity 1. So the plan for this video is first I'll discuss my grade level, subject, and the specific standards that I'll be using to guide my instructions in my class. After that, I'll talk about the big ideas for my standards and the skills that my students will need to use in order to achieve the standards. Lastly, I'll talk about two activities that I will use to help my students achieve the standards and how I plan on assessing them during these two activities. So the class that I'm teaching is a 7th grade humanities class, and the unit that we're on is the decline, fall, and legacy of the Roman Empire. So this is a very broad topic, and there is a lot of information on this topic. So using standards to help guide our class is very helpful. The standards that I'll be using come from the California State Common Core standards, and the specific standard is CA 7.1, which is that students analyze the causes and effects of the vast expansion and ultimate disintegration of the Roman Empire. So there are three substandards. The first is to study the early strengths and lasting contributions of Rome, and also what were its weaknesses, internal and external, that led to its eventual collapse. The second substandard is to look at its geographic borders and changes to its borders across time. The third substandard is about the split of the Roman Empire into the Western and Eastern Roman Empire, Eastern Roman Empire being the Byzantine Empire later on, and what were some of the major differences between these two empires, specifically with their view on religion and also church-state relations. So I've made 5 big ideas for these standards. Number 1 is why civilizations rise and fall. The second are the internal and external factors that lead to or that led to the Roman Empire's collapse. The third is how Roman history has influenced the pillars of society across time, and how is it relevant and significant in our lives today. The last big idea is how the language spoken during ancient Rome is linked to the languages of today. So I think these big ideas will help the students understand, number one, the general history of the Roman Empire in terms of its strengths and weaknesses. And even though it's been gone for 1,000 years, how did it affect later civilizations, and how does it continue to affect our civilizations today? So here are some of the skills that my students will need in order to achieve the standards. And I've broken the skills into 2 different groups. The first group is is for acquiring knowledge and information. So they're going to need to practice their cause and effect understanding, understanding perspective. We'll not only look at Roman history through the eyes of the Romans, but also through the eyes of other groups during that time period, specifically the Germanic tribes. We'll also look at maps and chronologies, understanding how the physical landscape of the Roman Empire changed over time, and also important sequences of events. Lastly, we'll look at real-world application. How do the contributions of the Romans still affect our lives today? The second set of skills that my students will need to practice is related to producing work. So number 1, they're going to need to practice their reading comprehension, and I'll get into this more when I talk about my activities. They'll need to practice their writing and public speaking. They'll need to practice their research skills, their collaboration skills, and also their creativity skills. All of these will be needed when they start working on their activities, which are all student-centered and project-based. So the first activity is a document-based question and essay. My students will be given sources on the decline of the Roman Empire, and these sources will give them information which they must analyze and then also answer questions. And these questions are a way for me to assess their understanding of the learning objectives. Following the questions, my students will then write an essay that summarizes the information from the documents, and this is also a way for me to assess their writing skills. The second activity that I'll be conducting with my class is the Legacy of Rome project. And this is a group project on how Roman history influences the civilizations of today. So my students will get into groups of 3, and they're going to choose from a list of topics related to the legacy of the Roman Empire. And these topics are also included in the California State Standards. So to help my students with their research, I will give them some guided questions, and how well they answer these guided questions will be a way for me to assess their understanding. Next, they're going to create an informational brochure, which allows me to assess their creativity, their teamwork, and their ability to meet deadlines, and also an oral presentation, which will allow me to assess their public speaking skills and their usage of the English language. So that's it for my video today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.